in this era of where technology, speed, and agility is so critical to bringing a capability together and then to being able to execute it to an output, tech accelerates that. The speed at which you've got to be able to do that to win requires partners, right? It requires an integration, a better partnership. And I think we saw that very clearly in the COVID response.
Welcome to the Future of GovCon, a weekly podcast that looks at what is happening now and how it will impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer, owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I talk to influencers across the industry every day. C-suite executives, growth officers, diplomats, senior government officials, and top flag officers. Every week, we bring in experts from across GovCon, cyber, AI, space, NATO, medical, and more. And we'll have them share the key trends happening today and how our industry will look in the years to come. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, hey, it's Jake. Welcome back to the Future of GovCon, the podcast that we put together to bring experts from across the industry, from all the different slices that make up the industry. We're bringing together folks that know so much about their area of expertise, and we're talking about what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future. We are thrilled to have with us today recently retired Lieutenant General Telita Crosland, who is joining us from the greater DC area. Telita, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jake. It's good to be with you all.
It's an honor to have you here. You have such a great career, such a great story, and you've had a huge impact on military medicine. So we're really looking forward to picking your brain. You woke up this morning, you said, I'm going to be on a podcast with Jake. What did you think about?
You know what, Jake? First, I made sure I got a good night's sleep to kind of keep up with you. Second, I'm pretty excited to have this conversation with you. I think throughout my 35 years, understanding of service, understanding how partners in the industry are so critical to our ability to be successful. We don't have a corner on the market for service because we wear uniforms. Other people serve, and our contractors are servant leaders with us. So I look forward to this conversation today.
Awesome. Great. I mean, you're so many things. You've achieved so much in the military, in medicine, as a mother, as a citizen. And so it's great to have you here. Let's go back to the beginning. Talk about you were born in Brooklyn, but you grew up in Queens. Is that right?
Yeah. New York City is 5 boroughs, and then there's the rest of the state. And that's how New Yorkers see it. You're from the city, and then there's New York State. And so I grew up in one of the 5 boroughs. I grew up in Queens, but I was born in Brooklyn. I'm one of 4 kids. And so I always tell folks when I describe how I grew up, I said, if you watched All in the Family, you saw all the houses lined up. I grew up in Queens, not Astoria. I think that's where all the family shot, is in Astoria, but our house was probably only 100 feet from the house to the right of us, but really grateful for my childhood.
And talk about growing up. You're one of 4 kids. You're in Queens. I think I read somewhere you wanted to be you knew at age 5 you wanted to be a doctor. What was that? Where'd you get that inspiration?
Yeah. I don't know where probably a book, right? I read a book. I was an avid reader as a kid, but I got it in my head that I wanted to be a doctor. And, I've told this to a few friends before, that it was weird because I actually wrote a poem about it. And, I can still remember the poem to this day. And so it's something strong inside of me that said, hey, physician is what you want to do.
I have 3 boys, and I'm hoping one of them becomes a physician. And I just talk about, it's a virtuous profession. You get to help people. It's very mobile. What do you think, as you were growing up and you stayed on that vector, what made you stay locked in on becoming a physician?
Yeah, as I mentioned to you, I'm one of 4. And so as we were raised as kids, our parents were really pretty focused on contributing. You had to contribute. You couldn't be a take in this world, and so I call it the secret ingredient of my childhood. Mom and dad in the house, three siblings, was unconditional love, expectations, and accountability. And so when I would come home from school, my mom would say, "What'd you learn today?" And if I gave a classic middle school, high school answer, nothing, she's like, "Well, I can take you out of school and put you to work because it's about giving." So I went into medicine, my sister went into education, and my two brothers went into law enforcement. And so when I look back, I mean, it's really strong that we do something positive and give back to those around us.
Did you have exposure or were you in touch with the military growing up or family members?
No, no, that's Jake. That's interesting. No one in my family, immediate family, is in the military, and so folks are like, "How did you end up at West Point?" And I said, "Well, it's not a really sexy story. The recruiter, right? Yeah, medical school was on the horizon. You know, I get to 11th grade high school. I'm in a pre med program. I'm thinking about college, 10th, 11th grade. Take a preliminary SAT and I release my scores. You know, kids, you know, and you sign a little bubble. And West Point was one of the first schools to send a postcard back. And at this point, I didn't know what strategy was. So I didn't have one for going to college. And it was the first one. So I replied, "Oh, this sounds interesting." But then I thought, 2, 3 months later, I go, "Okay, now I'm a junior. I got to start thinking seriously about where I want to go to college." Actually, I'm going into my senior year when this is happening. And I said, "Hey, okay." So I started listing out my schools, but by then I'd already said I was interested. And so the recruiter shows up, talks to my family, and there I am, July 1st, 1985, with, about 9,000 of my, almost 1,200 of my new best friends call new cadets.
I know what you mean. I did ROTC, but I got a lot of friends that did West Point. Talk about that experience at West Point. That was, we said mid 80s, late 80s.
Late 80s, or yeah. And so, I look back on it like most of us when we look back on things at this point in our lives, and you recognize how formative it was. Uh, like many colleges, right? It's a college. You make some of your best friends in life. What's different, obviously, about the academy is just focus on leadership. And again, everyone around you is like you, with respect to working hard, have potential to lead. And so you don't really see yourself as special. You do your best, you cooperate and graduate. It really inculcated teamwork. We get very little done in life without being part of a team, and a team that's bigger than yourself. And it certainly taught you that you can persevere through adversity, and not just persevere, you can thrive, right? I think West Point was very formative in helping me reframe things from hard, difficult, impossible to, you know what, we can figure this out as a team. And so I took that into my medical school. I took that into my pretty much my whole career.
Yeah, medical school isn't easy, but if you've been through West Point, I'm sure at least you have a really good foundation of hard work, discipline, and also, I mean, you're sitting there with your classmates at West Point, and the person to your left and the person to your right, they were probably top of their class and all state athletes, right? Being around really smart people really pushes you.
Yeah, and also teaches you to be humble, right? So it teaches you humility, and back to, you want to feel special. You are special among many. I'm laughing as you said, the attributes of West Point, the discipline, the hard work, and when you got to medical school. So let me tell you, I'll be honest. The first round of tests, so probably about the first 3 weeks in medical school, that felt like freedom to me, Jay. Yeah. And then, so we were all having a good time, 21 years old. And, I figured it out and get those first rounds of tests back. And you're like, ooh, I need to. I need to draw it on his discipline and his focus. And this isn't a time to party, but time to knuckle down and go after what you said you want to go after, which was to become a physician.
Now, did you have a gap between West Point and going to medical school, or did you go straight in?
No, I went straight in. Graduated the end of May, and then the beginning of July, mid-July, started OBC, and I went to the Uniformed Services University of Health Science, USU in Bethesda, Maryland.
So how long were you in medical school?
Yeah, 4 years of medical school. So graduate, had about 2 months, 3 months, and then started medical school and graduated from Uniformed Services in 1993.
And so
Uh,
how does that work? Are you I don't even are you in the Army while you're in medical school? Are you getting
yeah.
paid? And are you advancing in rank or
No, no, that's a great question. So, what I had to do is actually resign my West Point commission and take a commission in the reserves, and then you're activated. So you're non-promotable O1 for 4 years. And then, at least back then when I went, and then when that part's still true. Everybody's O1s, everybody's captains, lieutenants and ensigns. And then when you graduate, you're commissioned as an O3. So you commission as a physician, as a medical corps officer. But it was '03 was 0 time in grade. And so it was fun to go back in time in rank and status for a little bit. And then all of us are captains. All docs come in as captains, whether you came in through HVSP or you came in through USIS.
well they
I mean, you're
cheated
back
you
on
of
active
the
duty.
they cheated you of the pleasure of the best rank in the US Army, which is first lieutenant.
Yeah, yeah. I was never a first lieutenant, but I was a second lieutenant for a really long time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know how that worked. That's interesting. See, when you get to your first unit, talk about that experience. Where did you get stationed? What did you do when you were
Yeah, you do 4 years of medical school, and then you choose a specialty. In military medicine, you choose a specialty, and that specialty is shaped by the needs of, in my case, the Army. And I chose to do family medicine. That was my specialty, and I went and trained at Fort Gordon, Augusta, Georgia, at Eisenhower Army Medical Center at the time, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and did a 3-year residency of family medicine. And when I completed that, so now you're on active duty, you're learning your craft, series of tests and boards and all. And 3 years later, in 1996, I'm a board certified family doc, and I go to my first unit as a physician, and that was a 168th Medical Battalion in Korea.
Oh, nice. So straight to
Yeah,
Korea, huh?
yeah, yeah. It's serendipity, right? I was locked in on going to medical school at West Point, and I said, "Now, wouldn't it be great to be a lieutenant and go aviation and go to Korea for a year or two and then go to medical school, right?" And they said, "Sure, you can do that, Toledo. You just got to reapply to medical school." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, I'm already in." All right, so I ended up back in Korea, and I wasn't thrilled, Jake. Like many young officers, you think you know what's good for you. And I wanted to do this and that. And the Army said, nope, we need you in Korea. And so I went to 168th, and what a fantastic
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. I never got stationed there. I visited there. You're were you doing a lot of were you doing family medicine in Korea, or were you out doing training and
So I was in a medical battalion in Daegu, and so it was a little bit of both, right? I ran a clinic in a community in Daegu on the little base. You know, how you haven't been to Korea, they have different camps, and I was on the camp that had the clinic with our urgent care, some housing, and then there was another camp with the commissary and PX and so forth. And so I took care of the community, but we also did things like you remember when you would grab all your gear and you get ready to roll out and practice
oh yeah.
back in Germany,
Mertz. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would do those exercises. And probably the big thing we would do or the early return of dependent exercises. So, you would simulate having to move family members out and all the medical things required to do that, our medical battalion. And then a couple exercises, got to go up and stumble through the woods up at Camp Casey in pursuit of that elusive EFMB.
Okay. And so if you reflect on that path, okay, what would you say to young people, like to my kids? Well, they may not go to the Army, but what would you recommend that path of going through a service academy or even ROTC and medical school and doing it all becoming a medical professional under the kind of the steering arm of Uncle Sam in the military? Is that a good way to go?
Yeah, I would say to and what I would say, what I have said is if you take a step back, when I went up to West Point, I was 17. And you look and you go, oh, yeah, my parents had to sign. I didn't turn 18 till after I was up there. And so you look at those moments and you think, that's the world. That's it. It's not. It's a great education. I trained in those. I gave you 8 years, right? 7 years, 4 years in medical school and 3 years as a residency, and I got some of the best training in our country with essentially no real debt, being paid, and what I owed back was time. And I got to pay that time back doing what I love, which is taking care of human beings, practicing medicine. And I got to take care of some of the most deserving human beings, right? Those that wear the uniform, their families, those that have retired and their families. And it's just such a strong sense of community. And then I got to do it at different cool places. Yeah, I went to Korea kicking and screaming and crying, but when I got there, great medicine, great community, visited China, right? Went to Hong Kong. So you do all of that. And Jake, I was just, gosh, what, 26, 27? And so if you break it down, the time you give, depending on how you come in, I think HPSP is the best deal in town. It's a one for one. It's a scholarship, pays for medical school. And that's two assignments, right? And you were going to practice anyway. And you train, you do well. And so it was a great decision. There are things in life you look back and you regret. That's not one of them. That's one I was is obviously how I got to where I got throughout my career.
If you've been around a lot of doctors, I assume civilian doctors, commercial, hospital I mean, it would seem like the leadership experience you got from West Point and going out and being kind of in a line unit and uh, I would guess most doctors, commercial doctors, don't have that chance to have that kind of leadership training. That's because theirs is more technically focused, right?
Yeah, so we are very proud in military medicine. We're part of two professions, right? The profession of medicine and the profession of arms. And in both of them, leadership is critical, right? I would argue that most clinicians, if you're taking care of an individual, you do it as part of a team, and someone in that team has to make sure things are going well, that we see each other, that we're working together, that we're organizing, that we're trying to bring the best capability, Army terms, but treatment capability to a human being to get the best outcomes. And so it was a nice nexus rather, of leadership and medicine that comes together. You get to live that in the military at a fairly young age. As you know, captains have a lot of responsibility, and so does the medical captain who's out with a battalion or brigade as that senior medical officer. And so, yeah, I, I didn't appreciate it. Well, again, when you look back and reflect, you don't see it; you're living it. But certainly, as I became more senior, I recognized those opportunities as culminating to help me be a senior leader in military medicine. All of those were formative.
Well, I think that there's a case study in there that I mean, so many doctors, commercial doctors, civilian doctors, whatever kind of for-profit doctors, they take on a lot of responsibility. They may not have the training that military doctors have on that leadership aspect, which is just huge.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing when I tell folks about service in the military, and particularly the Army, because I'm not familiar with the education pipeline for the other services. I suspect they have it, but I can tell you within Army, um, let me add editorial right now that I'm not paying any tax dollars back. But if you do the math, I got my bachelor's of science from good, hardworking taxpayers in the United States. I got my master's in public health I got my MD, and then I got another master's from from the War College. And so the Army is very focused on developing as a leader across all spectrums, not just institutional. I just described all my institutional opportunities because that's what they all were. They were all opportunities, and Army invested in me to lead or develop me. And there's a lot to be said for that.
That's right. And you owe time, but you get a lot out of it.
You
Did you
sure
have
do.
do you have any mentors that jump out at you from your early days as a young officer? Are there any mentors that help shape you to the person you are now?
Yeah, Jake. So I mentioned Army's into institutional. Right. Then there's that experiential being put in positions and you grow and learn. And then there's that informal piece where others invest in you. And I had mentors throughout my entire career from the time I was a medical student, now retired Colonel Jeanette Softpaw and Captain Evelyn Lewis. So I went to school that was tri service, actually, plus the public health. And so I got exposed to the joint environment in medical school, which is way cool. Uh, and then moving on into my career in captain times, Major General retired Jeff Clark at the time was Lieutenant Colonel Clark. All these folks are still in my life. That's the other cool part, right? The military family is strong and it endures and perseveres, it supports and grows with you. And so I've had many mentors throughout my career.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, talk a little bit about early days in Korea. Um, what other types of roles did you have during your military career, moving up through the ranks?
Yeah, so I did to Korea, went back to school. I had a couple assignments, then I got the opportunity to go back to school and get my master's in public health. And then we call it, I was an Iron Major. You know about the Iron Majors. I was an Iron Major at Fort Hood. And boy, just the right mix of, especially at that point in your rank and experience where I was running a clinic that, 20 something, 1,000 enrollees, taking care of soldiers. I was a profist doc, meaning I was assigned to 4ID and I would go out and train with them. I was also associate teaching staff. So we were training the next up and coming generation of family medicine doctors at Fort Hood. It was the assignment where, boy, I just got to grow and learn and lead. I then fast forward, got to go to uh, CGSC, again, another opportunity now called ILE, Army Invest. And then I move on to a bigger place, how right, you kind of ascend, and I was at Fort Lewis. Uh, and at Fort Lewis was this assistant department chief, teaching staff, deployed from there. A lot of things happened when I was at Fort Lewis, to include meeting my late husband. And so I got married while I was out at Fort Lewis, and then we headed over to Germany. And so career kept moving, increasing responsibilities, opportunities to lead, and then career in Germany was my first command as a O5. Uh, I was a commander of now it was Grafenwehr Health Clinic, and so yeah, I was in Graf, and it was awesome. It was awesome.
It just rains all the time. That's a problem with Grafenwehr.
Yeah, the months of probably end of April till September is spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. Spent some time there. What was the highlight of your career, would you say? If you had to pick one duty station or a moment or something that happened, what would be the highlight of your career?
Yeah, it is really hard, Jake, to drill 35 years, 10 months, and 13 days down to assignment. And so I'm going to beg out and say, you know what? The height of my career was the ability to continue to 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 be a physician leader and to culminate running their health system for the Department of Defense as the DHA director, right? I told you, no one in my family military. I went to West Point, recruiter got me, and so there's no way I'm going to tell you. I thought this is where I would end up. There's just no way. I could see that it is incredible, and it's a blessing, and I'm grateful for all my opportunities to serve, and most grateful for all the people, the
You go
mission, and the people.
you go from from growing up in Queens to running a $61 billion military health system. That's that's a path. That's a hell of a
Yeah, it
journey.
is path. It is, and, thanks to all the mentors along the way from the most junior all the way up to the surgeon generals, other mil depth surgeon generals, so it's just been it's crazy. It's crazy to think of the things I've gotten to do.
Great journey. Great journey. So, uh, so looking back on that journey, when did you first come in contact with government contractors?
Yeah, so in, military medicine, government contractors are a huge part of how we are successful in delivering care. It's just been woven in. We can start with simply our TRICARE contract,
Right.
right?
My mom's
TRICARE
on
is
TRICARE. I mean, my brother's on TRICARE. I get it.
yeah. So if you look at how the system is put together, our relationships with government contractors, in this case, in the healthcare managed care support contractors, are what we call them, from our dental plan to our health plan. I'm young enough, that's a spin, old enough to remember when Champus and all of that started to come together and the Department of Defense started leveraging industry and carriers like Humana and TriWest to provide care to our beneficiaries. So that's, and also inside of that, we had at Fort Hood, I had contractors working with me as doctors in our clinics, right? Doctors, PAs, nurses. So contracting's been really fundamental part of how Army medicine at the time, that's what I was a part of, was able to do its mission from housekeeping um, all the way up to doctors and nurses.
Yeah, I've never thought. I mean, it's got to be integrated, right? Because
Yep.
you can't have soldiers doing everything. There's got to be some flexibility and some capacity through contracting from the
Yeah,
custodians
our team.
to the managed care providers, right?
Yep, our team was always contractors, GS, and a uniformed.
Yeah. How much contracting training would you get? How did you learn about how to manage contractors?
Oh, so it's a great question. Like most systems, you have a COR, right? The core. And I never really had much, even as a DHA director, much with choosing contractors and overseeing the contract. But I will tell you, as a young major running a clinic, the contract docs were part of the team. And so you had flexibility, of course, and being able to adjust hours and so forth. And that's how I learned. I just learned by on the job kind of a training. And at the end of the day, they're human beings and they're an integral part of our team. So from a leadership perspective, treating the contractors and then paying attention, there's some rules, right? You have to pay attention to rules, whether you're having a social, a party, trying to bring the team together on how to do that appropriately.
Did you get formal contracting training, acquisition training? Was there any?
Not not until I was a DHA director. Uh, and I took some courses, the Defense Acquisition, DAU University were kind enough to say, hey, some formal training wouldn't be a bad idea given the size of the TRICARE contract and how much contract in DHA does. Real quick, a little history lesson, Jake. The Defense Health Agency stood up in 2013. I was a director, the fourth director, and at the 10th year, that's when everything meaning everything paid for by the defense appropriation dollars, DHP, defense program dollars, came over to DHA. So that's when you get that big number. But prior to that, it was the TRICARE contract, which is, it's a substantial, it's almost half of the healthcare delivery. So about 20 billion or so is the value of that contract. And so, yeah, they invited me, and I'm sure you can appreciate DHA now as a central body overseeing the entire system. Contracting is a big piece of uh, IT, right? Your help desk, those kinds of things. There's a lot of brilliant people who manage that inside of the Defense Health Agency.
Around the world too. It's not just domestic. I mean, that's
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to learn about how the contracts work in, say, Europe.
Right.
and how they work, and in the Indo-Pacific. And ISOS is another key contractor that's a partner with the Defense Health Agency, critical to our ability to provide care overseas, and also can be a critical resource in operations like COVID and Afghanistan withdrawal. We saw how that contract came into play, both CONUS and OCONUS, so that we could do our overall operational mission as well.
Yeah, it's a great company. They really set themselves apart. They do good work. Um, so let's kind of talk. We're going to build up to talk about the future. Let's look the past 10 years. Let's go back to 2015 to now. What have you seen to be like the biggest innovation? What's changed the most that you've seen over the last, say, decade?
I would say a couple things. The first one of them is a recognition that in this era of where technology, speed, and agility is so critical to bringing a capability together and then to being able to execute it to an output, tech accelerates that. The speed at which you've got to be able to do that to win requires partners. All right, it requires an integration, a better partnership, and I think we saw that very clearly in the COVID response with the whole of government, and with DoD, frankly, being a key leader in that. We got to see up close how we worked with pick a company, pick an organization to develop a capability, whether it was testing or the actual vaccine. And then the leadership that it took, because you can't cheat that, right? You can have all the innovation in the world, you can have all the tech in the world, you can have all the ideas in the world, but if you can't lead it to an effect, then you really haven't accomplished much. And so you saw all that come together under the crucible of need, right? It just had to happen. So, and it did. And it's just amazing to be a part of that. And so as I moved into becoming the DHA director, there was a really, in my mind, a clarity of in order for us to run a healthcare system, a modernized healthcare system that our beneficiaries deserve, it is going to take partnership. There are things that we don't do well, right? We're a healthcare system across the globe. We deliver care like most healthcare systems, but we also run contracts. And so, how do we partner with the industry to make sure we're able to tap into what they do really well, which I think is speed, right? Agility, and how do we share that with our ability to do it at scale? Right? How do we bring that together? Because we can operationalize and execute very well. And so that partnership was born, in my mind, as a DHA director, not born, but was critical.
Yeah, I think Jake's little podcast snippet is, I think COVID was a historical case study to show when there's urgency. And I think every individual felt like the COVID gun was pointed at them. Most people felt personally vulnerable. It's amazing what we were able to do. I mean, government got together with industry and R&D, celebrities got involved. I mean, people were wiping down their Dorito bags. Uh, Everybody got involved and we changed our behavior 90 degrees. I mean, it's a massive just turn in behavior and it shows it's just a historical case study of what humankind can do if you have to all work together. And you were right in the middle of that historical moment. And hopefully it doesn't come back again, but it's just amazing the behavioral changes. They weren't all great and weren't things we wanted to do, but we changed our behavior substantially. So it shows we can do it. We could do it in light of other things like climate change or other things that will require drastic behavioral, collective behavioral, and individual behavioral change. We did it during COVID.
Yeah, yeah. And what COVID gave me as a senior leader a glimpse of is the things that we thought were hard in modernizing medicine, not just inside the military health system, but across our country. A lot of those regulations and things that we were pushing up against came down under COVID, and we got to see how much care can you actually project. still what I was a deputy surgeon general at the time, and I saw it as a capability for our military, but also our beneficiaries. How much care can we project virtually? And when you started adding some of the sensors that are out there, when I say sensor, just think your Apple Watch, right? And if I could check your oxygenation from home rather than have you come into a hospital and expose you as a senior, I've done a lot of good for you. And they were doing not just that in the military health system, but across our country. And so a lot of the things we thought were hard and too difficult, COVID, as you said, the need pushed us, we did it. And when some of the regulations came down, some of the fear was overcome, and the tools and technology were leveraged, you could do a lot of things making care more accessible, more equitable, more holistic, and we could do that at scale.
So
Right.
why can't we harness that without an emergency? Why do we have to have an existential emergency to make us do what was clearly doable?
Yeah, the podcast is not long enough for me to go through the history of healthcare in the United States. But what I will get back to is something you said: we've got to change some behaviors, and we got to change some incentives, because in COVID, some of the rules I alluded to were reimbursement rules. Some of the rules were how and what you could do virtually and get reimbursed for, um, who could do it from where, and so forth. And so we have a very, we call it a triangle, right, between payers, healthcare systems, and beneficiaries, right? And there's that tension of how do you make sure people get good care at an affordable cost. And I'm a big fan that I think technology is the solution set, and we got a glimpse of that during the COVID response on what the potential opportunities are if we're able to retool our healthcare system where it embraces a more data centric environment where we can start to use your information not just when you're sick, but before you become sick to help you stay healthy. And so
How do you think COVID would have been different in our response if AI had been as prevalent then as it is now?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of AI in the COVID response, I want to say up front, we got pushed, and it was kind of neat to see some innovation things aside of the DoD where, using watches or using tools to track, hey, you're getting a fever. That's before you recognize your temperature is rising, and test to see that you are in fact sick, and then to be able to not have you expose more people, right? And so I think COVID showed us what it could look like and showed us that it could be done safely and responsibly. That's huge, Jake, in healthcare, right? And so we want to always make sure that um, first do no harm, right? And so I think a lot of the technology and some of the AI was being used in COVID. And if we had what we have today, then boy, maybe we could identify hot pockets before they knew they were going to be
Yeah,
a
you
hot
got to
pocket.
wonder.
All right,
You got to wonder if
right.
COVID happened now, would we be so much more prepared because of AI? You got to think.
You would hope.
Yeah, you would hope.
I'm not convinced there's a system, right? But
Right.
certainly there's an opportunity
There's an
that I will say
opportunity.
for sure.
So let's look at today. Let's look what's going on. 2025, transformational year. So much happening globally, foreign policy, domestically, technology wise. I mean, the breakout of AI. This year is probably one of the most transformational years in government contracting since 9/11, since 2001. What do you see happening today? What do you see happening today that's going to have an impact on the future of the industry?
Yeah, the thing I'm seeing that's happening today is that first there's a clear recognition that if you're in my field, really, I think it's a clear recognition. We've got to pay attention to AI and data. We absolutely have to see its value inside of healthcare. And then I'm a big fan of those of us that are clinically oriented, that have run hospital systems, but are also caring about the policy, the strategy, and the money be part of that conversation, because at the end of the day, healthcare is about taking care of people and keeping them healthy, right? When you're ill, providing you the next best care. And we've got to not be afraid of it. We've got to leverage it, right? We've got to leverage it. So that's the first thing. As an industry, we have to stop the lean back and wait for someone else to go, because I do believe it'll be disruptive. And if you pay attention, I mentioned Apple Watches. Apple Watches can do an EKG now, right? It can, and I'm not advertising for Apple. There's tons of sensors out there that people use to keep themselves healthy. That's also giving them what we would argue is clinical information back, right? And so you should ask yourself, what part of medicine gets better for my patients if I leverage AI? If I leverage, and not be afraid of it, leverage it responsibly. What part of it? And so as a clinician, I could see things that ordinarily I would miss as an individual. It's not replacing my thinking. It's able to comb through a lot of data and show me trends that I simply couldn't see as a human being, right? So if we reframe it that way, I think we have some opportunities to do a lot of good for a lot of folks. The last editorial thing I think that's important is I'm a big fan that data, uh, when we have our health data and we look at health more holistically, not just when you're sick, but you look at what I'm doing from sensors in my environment and you pull that all together, you get a more holistic look at a person. And then you have an opportunity to help that person be well, and when they're ill, to intervene sooner. Um, those algorithms, those things that AI uses, we've got to make sure that we are paying attention that that data is in fact representative,
Mhm.
that we're not amplifying biases, that we're not amplifying the data that we had.
It's got to be used morally, right? It's got to be
Yeah,
used.
it's got to be used morally, and it's got to be used, and it can be used individually. When you look at genetics now, there are lots of data out there. There's lots of information that technology is giving us, and we just got to put together responsibly. I think that to your original question on what do I see in the future, I see in the future that if you look at who's doing all this stuff, right? What I'm excited about, there are a lot of tech companies out there, right? And they're not the traditional contractor, right? They're not the big contractor that we normally work with. And so, what I see for the future, and at least what I was certainly trying to lead in the DHA, is we've got to be more agile. We've got to get more comfortable with telling the industry, here's the desired output. You tell us what you have out there that can get us there, because this isn't our strength. We run a healthcare system, right? And yeah, we can ingest high tech CAT scans, equip medical. We're good on the research, all of that. Um, but it's so much and so fast. The industry may be better at some things than we are. We don't build, right? We should buy and integrate and let them build. And so we've got to open our aperture up to some of these I call them non-traditional, and a lot of them are smaller because tech scales, right? If you look at what's going on overseas in operations, um, the ability to write code and write code that has an impact isn't a big company necessarily. And so, right. And so we have to get better at putting out what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then having engagements with industry in a more broader sense than traditionally we have in the past. And then the military health system in particular have to get really good at implementing, right? So you take it in, you assess it, it's right, it's what we need, implement and execute. Because if we're not quick and agile, a year from now,
It's gone. Yeah.
it's gone, and the next thing, and we fall further behind.
Yeah. So let's go in the future, not 10 years, not even 5 years, 3 years. It's 2028. Uh, Talk about, and let's just take military medicine because that's your area of expertise. What does it look like? What do we look like in terms of military medicine from a government contracting lens? How does healthcare look? How does global support? How do we look?
Yeah, if we all take a step back, military health system supports the operational force, and operational force is giving you a sense of where our country's going in that space, right? You know, we have a space command. So it is about data. It's about the ability to sense and see and bring a capability. And when you look at that from a medical perspective and operational setting, do you have autonomous vehicles? Yes, we're looking at autonomous vehicles in operational sense. We should think that we're going to look at it in the medical sense too, to be able to move. Are we going to be able to detect a threat before we have 10,000 patients demonstrating the threat, right? So you should think that, you want a future where we can sense not just the enemy, but the medical threats in an operational setting. And then you roll that back into the Defense Health Agency, the civilian, the TRICARE, the healthcare, same thing. Are we going to be able to detect and intervene? And are we going to be able to do it in a way that is cost effective, right? I don't want to be Pollyannish and act like that dollars don't matter. They really do. And I think 3 years from now, we will start to recognize, back to your point of earlier, how do we leverage AI technology that if I'm a soldier or a family member, a tool that is helping me stay healthy and helping me stay ready makes me more productive in operational setting and makes me more productive in my life at home. And I think those tools are out there, and seeing them come together in not just a proactive way, but also a proactive way. And then when, as a system, you can see it and we can intervene. And we call that value based care, right? Where you're putting dollars and resources to keep people healthy, intervene, and manage chronic diseases, as an example, better. And so I see things being a little more accessible. I see folks leveraging things more conveniently from their phones,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
right? Your ability to communicate with a, a bot that has a decent algorithm that says, Jake, you know, you are fine. You cough one time, you don't have to go to the ER. Uh, these are things you should look out for.
Yeah. Do you see sensors
Right.
being used more
Oh gosh, yeah.
at the
Oh yeah,
individual
absolutely.
wearables? And do you see every
Yeah.
service member wearing some sort of sensor from a health monitoring perspective?
Yeah, yeah, I see that, our brown T-shirts that, we used to love, can you imagine that having a bit of a mesh on there? And that's a sensor, and that sensor can sense your vital signs, can sense your body temperature is increasing, and then a mass cow potentially can assess and help that medic who has it now on maybe a phone or maybe an iPad or something, to say, "Hey, I need to pull so and so offline." Um, I checking in for your mental well-being. Uh, is there a way to do that responsibly? The answer is yes. It's out in the commercial sector right now. So I see the military harnessing some of those things that are already tested and out in the commercial sector, bringing it in a responsible way to help the readiness and the well-being of not just the force but family members and our retirees, is where I would love to see that spill over. I want to have similar capabilities, Jake, as a
Yeah,
retiree.
that's it's fascinating to think about. So if you had a pot of some money to invest, let's say a large pot of money, what in terms of military medicine, where would you be investing right now?
I'll tell you where I was driving the investments. It was something called the omni-channel digital front door, and it does just what I just described, Jake. It's the ability for me as a human being, before I'm sick and ill, to get some cues. Right? I don't know about you, but my phone periodically asks me, "Hey, reflect on your day." So imagine me reflecting on my day, saying, I had a really rough day. And it says, you know what? Here's some things you can do to bring your stress level down. Right? That all exists right now. We just got to pull it together. Um, and got to use it. And again, I gave you an example. My body temperature is rising. Okay, well, your body temperature is rising. Maybe you may be in a little bit ill. You're on a trajectory for a fever, right? And maybe I need to do a COVID test. Maybe I need to take some Tylenol and start increasing fluids. right? And so getting into a more proactive kind of engagement is where I think value growth is. And then the data, of course, can be transmitted, right? So building out that data fabric that allows things to my doc to see that same thing because I chose to let them see it, then they can intervene. Maybe I didn't understand my body temperature was going up and what that really meant. But I get a call from a nurse
Yeah, they're like,
who
hey,
says,
you
"Hey,
need to,
Talita."
yeah,
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
And
It's
people think this is notional. That's how I got a hip surgery and it was an app that I did my initial follow up in. I checked in on my app. It showed me my exercises. It sent a note to my clinical team that says things are going well. And the day I forgot to do it, I got a message from my team going, "Hey, just checking in on you.
super
Everything going okay?"
amazing. So let's try and wrap it up. Um, Give me one word. Describe your view, your feeling about the future of government contracting as it relates to military medicine. Give me one word.
Futuristic.
Ah, we're hitting a tipping point then, huh?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I think we're at a tipping point.
Well, it's fantastic. Talita, you're a soldier, you're a doctor, you're a leader. Um, you have just a fantastic story. It should be an inspiration to anybody out there that is thinking about a career in this space. For our business community out there, some really good ideas about investment opportunities, where things are heading. So really, really appreciate you coming in and sharing some of your experience and your thoughts with us.
See, Jake, thanks for asking me. Thanks for having me here. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And for those that get the invite, Talita will be our guest speaker for a luncheon on the sidelines at AUSA. So looking forward to her sharing more wisdom with our guests there. So awesome. Look forward to seeing you here in about a month and a half.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right. So folks, again, thanks to Telita Crosland. And if you enjoyed today's show, make sure you follow us. Make sure you share this with your friends. It's some great content. If you have any questions or ideas or comments, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. And also make sure you're following Precision Talent Solutions on LinkedIn. We're putting out information every day about what's going on in the industry, contract awards, rumors, jobs that are coming up. So make sure you're following us. We look forward to seeing everybody on our next episode of The Future of GovCon. Goodbye, everybody. So thanks for joining me on The Future of GovCon. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend. Follow the podcast and subscribe to YouTube so you don't miss our bold predictions shaping our industry. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and learn more about Precision Talent Solutions at pts.careers. Thanks for tuning into The Future of GovCon and see you next week.